Welcome to Contacto, brought to you by the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. My name is Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO. It's a very special day in Houston. Today we have with us Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee. Our community is so grateful to have her all the time here at the Chamber and everywhere else representing us. Congresswoman, what an exciting day for Houstonians and for women in the city of Houston. Thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you, Dr. Murillo, first of all, for your leadership, and I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited that she is actually on the scene where we held the first ever When Women Succeed, America Succeeds at our outstanding Young Women's Preparatory Academy, which has an enormous diversity of young women from around the city, Hispanic young women, Anglo, African American, Asian. What a perfect example of the power of women. And so today we brought to the city the Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi, who in fact has made history in her own right in this wonderful month of celebrating Women's History Month. As you well know, she was the former Speaker of the House, the first woman in the history of the United States to be Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Yes, and she represents us very well. And it gave us such great pride to see two of our own Hispanic Chamber of Commerce board members, Diva Daughtry, who received an award, and Maria Rios, who told her personal story. Thank you again for highlighting the accomplishments of these women and the look in the eyes of the young women that are in school here. The young lady who asked a question so eloquently. Again, what a great opportunity to celebrate women's history and, again, to showcase the talent here in our city.
That's what we wanted to do. But first of all, what we really wanted to do is to put the power of women around moving their own economic agenda forward. Not having someone else do it or someone else make excuses for not doing it. Let's not make any more excuses about not raising the minimum wage. This is a bipartisan, nonpartisan issue because you may be a rural woman, you may be urban, you may be a single mother raising children or a young woman, but you are a consumer, you're part of the economy. And the more fungible dollars you have to support yourself and to provide for your basic needs is an economic engine for the economy. That's one. Pay equity. Our young women who are graduating from college, or maybe our young women who have graduated and now have just come into the workplace, and they look to see that they're not getting the same payment as their very dear friends, their male counterparts. Yes. Pay equity, sick paid leave, universal child care, around-the-clock child care. A woman may choose. My mother chose to work at night because she wanted to be home with us during the day. We didn't know any better. We thought we had a stay-at-home mom, but she worked at night, and she needed help for us at night. And then, of course, family medical leave. So a lot of times, these are looked at as issues that you put to the side. Those are girl issues. It's not defense. It's not issues in the Judiciary Committee, law and order. It's not science and science, technology, engineering, and math. It's not building highways. But it is an important agenda for America. And if we don't get women's power from all walks of life, Republicans and Democrats, to rally around treating women fairly, the clarion call of treating women fairly as relates to the economic part of their life. So today, we're launching it.
On the personal note, Congresswoman, you are so active, you're so passionate. As a young girl growing up, did you envision yourself sitting and representing this community in Washington, D.C. as a young girl growing up?
I love that question because I hope that those who may be viewing this will take my personal comments to say, well, I'm not thinking about anything right now either. Or my life right now does not look like it's going to go anywhere. And as a young girl, certainly this was not on my mind. I was, in my mind, middle income, but I was low income. Both parents had not finished college, and both parents worked in real working jobs. We wouldn't even call them blue collar. We didn't understand that term, but they worked hard. And I think the only thing that we might have thought about was that the children had to be successful. But there were no direct role models to say that I want to be like this person. But let me tell you what we had: a lot of love, a lot of people in our lives, a lot of aunts, and some uncles, but a lot of women, from grandmothers to aunts. And that's why I knew that it was so very important for me to hold this meeting.
Thank you for your leadership in Houston and for representing the great city of Houston. Minority Leader Pelosi, I represent the largest Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in the country. My name is Dr. Laura Murillo. Thank you for coming to Houston. Thank you for your vision as it relates to women. One topic that was not addressed that is critically important is comprehensive immigration, and I know that Congresswoman Jackson Lee has been at the forefront. Can you give us some hope for comprehensive immigration?
Well, let me say thank you for being here and for your question. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of where I've been before I came to Houston this week since we got out of session, and I was in San Antonio where we had a When Women Succeed event, and I was in Laredo where we had a number of events. And the subject of immigration, of course, is one that is, in my view, central to who we are as a country, that we must have comprehensive immigration reform and that we must do it soon. And it's long overdue. Congresswoman Jackson Lee sits on the Judiciary Committee on the subcommittee of immigration, so she has been working on this for a very long time. You asked me what I thought about its prospects. Well, 1 year ago, we thought we had a bipartisan agreement. We accepted the offer that was given to us, but then it was withdrawn. In June of last year, the Senate passed a bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform bill. It had some problems for some of us, but we said, if that's it, we'll go with that. The House leaderships, the Republican leadership said they weren't ever going to bring up that bill. So we, and Congresswoman Jackson Lee helped craft what we had, H.R. 15. H.R. 15 contains the immigration pieces that are in the Senate bill and the piece that was passed by Congressman McCall as chairman of Sheila's committee, Homeland Security. The piece on border security came from the bipartisan, under the leadership of Congressman McCall in the Homeland Security Committee. So that's H.R. 15, completely bipartisan, even passed in the Senate or passed in the committee in the House. We are now are planning to have a discharge petition to just say one thing: give us a vote. Give us a vote on immigration reform. It's been 1 year since we accepted your offer. It's been 9 months since the Senate passed its bill. The time is running out for this Congress. We need legislation, and it's long overdue.
Picking up pieces of my life, sometimes there's ones I just can't find, but they found a home with you. And when I think about the things that we've been through, I know just one thing is true: life is better with you. Whoa, whoa, life is better with you.
I mean, really, where would we be without small businesses?
We need small businesses.
They're the ones that help drive growth.
Like electricians, mechanics,
Who
carpenters.
strengthen our communities.
Every year, Chevron spends billions with small businesses. That goes right to the heart of local communities, providing jobs, keeping people at work. They depend on us,
The economy depends on them.
and we depend on them.
The Port of Houston is a testament to human ingenuity. It consists of public terminals, a massive turning basin, more than 150 private terminals, and one of the world's largest petrochemical complexes. But the port's strengths go beyond size. The Port of Houston Authority is the first in the country to meet international environmental management standards. It is the first in the world to receive global security certification for its police and perimeter security operations. The Port of Houston delivers.
Visit HoustonTexans.com to join the season ticket priority wait list today.
The Port of Houston, a huge part of our local economy, channeling opportunity to all of us.
Same goes for Amegy Bank of Texas. Like the port, we help local businesses expand their horizons
with the services they need to navigate international waters.
and the financial strength to do the heavy lifting.
So come see the very local, very international bankers at Amegy.
Together, we'll chart a steady course for your future.
Amegy Bank of Texas, the A Bank.
I've been growing grapefruit as long as I remember. You can say I grew up in these groves. That's why HEB came to me to find the best grapefruit in Texas. Like this Rio Star, the soil, sunlight, and climate help them grow to perfection. It's so sweet and juicy, every bite will make you smile. You won't find another place in the world that can do it better. We send HEB hundreds of thousands of pounds of these beauties each year, and they always come back for more. I'm Paul, and this is the best grapefruit in Texas department at HEB. No store does more than my HEB.
Vamos a poner la alfombra para que entre la primavera. Veamos cuándo y qué sembrar. ¿Y el cómo? Vamos con los que saben. Vamos a ahorrar, vamos a poner las ideas a volar alto y vamos a subirle de tono. Vamos a subirle a la alegría. Vamos a hacerlo. The Home Depot. Haz más ahorrando.
At Shell, we believe the world needs a broader mix of energies. Let's go.
Today we have a very special guest joining us here at the Chamber offices, ready to meet with some of our corporate sponsors and also some of our board members. We'd like to welcome Senator Ted Cruz.
Dr. Murillo, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and value your input, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Well, we see you on television quite a bit. We see you in the paper. I don't think too many people, though, know your personal story and the impact that your father, his experience had on your political career. So let's touch on that first.
Well, my dad's experience is a huge part of who I am. He was born in Cuba and grew up in Cuba, grew up fighting in the revolution, fighting against Batista, who was a cruel and corrupt dictator. And as a kid, my dad was imprisoned and tortured. When he was 17, he was thrown in prison. He was beaten almost to death. And he fled Cuba in 1957 and he came to Texas. And when he landed in Austin, he was 18, he couldn't speak English. He had $100 sewn into his underwear. And he got a job, he washed dishes, made 50 cents an hour, and paid his way through the University of Texas. And went on to get a job, to start a small business. Today he's a pastor. You know, I have to say that being the child of an immigrant who came here with nothing is really an integral part of who I am. My dad's been my hero my whole life. But the thing I found most amazing is that his story is so commonplace. So many of us, all of us really, we share that story. We are the children of immigrants who risked everything for freedom. I think that's what really stitches together Americans. I think that's our common tie that binds.
Well, there are a lot of things going on in Houston, in Texas in particular, and I think there's a lot of frustration among constituents is that things are not getting done in Washington, that we lack that communication to do the things that need to be done. One, for example, Keystone Pipeline. It seems to be that we have support on both sides of that, on both sides of the aisle. In addition, there have been several environmental assessments that indicate that it's good, economic studies. What are you doing to help move this forward?
Well, you're absolutely right. Washington is broken. It's not working, and far too many elected officials just aren't listening to the people who elected them. One of the very first things that I did upon being elected to the Senate was joined with 52 other senators in a bipartisan letter to President Obama, calling on him over a year ago to immediately approve the Keystone Pipeline. And we then went to a press conference with 10 senators, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. We stood arm in arm and said, listen, this is a no-brainer. This will produce tens of thousands of high-paying jobs. It's good for this country. It'll produce tax revenue. It's good for us from a national security perspective, and it's good environmentally. Unfortunately, a year and a half has gone by, and the president still refuses to approve the pipeline. As you note, there are 62 senators on record supporting the Keystone Pipeline. That's a bipartisan group, enough to beat a filibuster. But Harry Reid won't let it come to a vote. And one of the things that the majority leader has almost total power over is whether to allow something to come up for a vote. In my view, Keystone is one example of a broader issue, which is my very top priority in office is focused on one thing, and that is restoring jobs and economic growth. I think that's the top priority of the 26 million Texans that I'm responsible for representing, and it's the top priority for Americans, and it's what Washington isn't focused on. Energy presents an incredible opportunity for us to allow good, high-paying jobs to be created, and unfortunately, Washington right now is only standing in the way.
So another area where you've been very vocal is on the Affordable Care Act. You seem to think that that is just not good for America, and long term we will pay the consequences of that. Right. So what is the solution in your mind?
Well, the solution is twofold. The first is to repeal Obamacare, and the second is to adopt common sense health care reforms that will empower patients and expand access and affordability. On the first piece, 4 years ago, reasonable people could have differed in terms of whether Obamacare might have worked or not. Yes. At this point, 4 years into it, we've seen what's happened. We've seen millions of Americans lose their jobs, millions of Americans be forced into part-time work. We've seen over 6 million Americans have their health insurance canceled. You know, every time I'm back home in Texas, men and women come up to me and they say, Ted, I got a letter canceling my health insurance. I'm scared. I've got a daughter with diabetes. What do I do? And we've also seen millions of Americans having their premiums skyrocket. You know, for a 27-year-old man in Texas in the individual market, his premiums have risen over 70% because of Obamacare.
But that would be the exception, don't you think? A recent study indicated that overall premiums are only going up about 3%. Are those studies wrong?
In the individual market, which is the market that Obamacare has focused on, because one of the things that the administration has done is it's made all sorts of exemptions that are not in the law to delay its impact on other markets. So the market that has felt Obamacare directly is the individual market. And in the individual market, people's premiums have skyrocketed. Some have gone up as high as 100, 200, 300%. This is not working. And in my view, looking at the disaster, when you have 7 million people who've lost their health insurance because of Obamacare, it is at this point the essence of pragmatism to acknowledge this isn't working. Let's start over. And how should we start over? We should start over in a way that empowers individuals and consumers and patients, that expands competition, that expands access. Now, what would that mean? I think we should, number one, allow people to purchase health insurance across state lines. That would create a 50-state national marketplace, which would let people purchase low-cost, catastrophic policies. If you want more access, the biggest barrier to access is cost. If you want to see increased access, you want lower cost and more choices. What Obamacare does is it restricts it to fewer choices and higher cost. Number two, we need to expand health savings accounts so people can save in a tax-advantaged way for routine health care needs. And the third thing we need to do is we need to work to de-link health insurance from employment. So your health insurance plan is portable, just like your car insurance or your life insurance. You know, if you leave your current job, you don't lose your car insurance or your life insurance, you take it with you. And that goes a long way to solving the problem of pre-existing conditions. Because where people run into pre-existing conditions, where it really becomes a problem is when they lose their job, they lose their insurance, and they can't get a new policy. What all of those reforms do is they empower you, the patient, to make decisions about your health care, your family's health care, without the government getting between you and your doctor. That's the sort of reforms we ought to be pursuing.
So as you know, there's been a lot of concern, in particular in the minority communities, Hispanic community, women, that the Republican Party has just lost touch with their base, and that even some of the staunch Hispanic Republicans are considering voting in the Democratic elections. What is being done to address that?
Well, listen, Politics right now is poisonous with the rhetoric, and I recognize that people are saying lots of mean, nasty attacks directed at the political world. Let me suggest we should focus on the substance. If you look at the substance, the path we're on isn't working. The Obama economic agenda of the last 5 years has produced the lowest labor force participation since 1978. Millions of people are hurting, and the people who've been hurt the most by the current path are the most vulnerable among us. They're young people, they're Hispanics, they're African Americans, they're single moms. You know, I often try to think of the issues we're facing from the perspective of my dad. When he was washing dishes in 1957 at 50 cents an hour. If my dad were still washing dishes today, the odds are very high he would have lost his job because of 1.7 trillion in new taxes, because of crushing regulations that are hammering small businesses. As you know, in the Hispanic Chamber, there are 2.3 million Hispanics who own small businesses. And small businesses generate 2/3 of all new jobs in America. Small businesses are getting hammered, and the people getting laid off are people like my dad. They're teenage immigrants washing dishes. If my dad hadn't been laid off, if he was lucky enough to keep his job, the odds are overwhelming he would have had his hours forcibly reduced to 28 or 29 hours a week, because the threshold for Obamacare is 30 hours a week. And you can't feed your kids. He wouldn't have been able to pay his way through school on 28 hours a week. I think we need to get back to a vibrant economy where small businesses can prosper, can create jobs, where people who are struggling can achieve the American dream. And I think that is an agenda. That's not a 51% agenda. That's a 60, 70, 80% agenda that appeals to Americans across the board. And Washington right now, politicians in both parties, they're not listening to the American people.
So you made two very important points. One, the fact that Washington is not listening to the American people. The other is that small business drives this economy.
Absolutely.
Factored into that is the whole community of immigrants. They play a huge role in all of these areas, and also the economic role. Yet, the Republican Party continues to say, well, let's take care of border security and let's find a legal pathway. Yet, again, the community, a large part of the community is saying, we want comprehensive immigration reform, yet we just can't get there.
You know, immigration is an issue that is unfortunately mired in so much politics in Washington. In my view, if you look outside of Washington, there is a lot of bipartisan agreement on many aspects of immigration. I think there is overwhelming bipartisan agreement that we, number one, need to get serious about securing the border, that we need to solve the problem of illegal immigration. And number two, I think there's overwhelming bipartisan agreement outside of Washington that we need to improve and streamline legal immigration, that we need to remain a nation that doesn't just welcome, that celebrates legal immigrants. You know, I mean, as you know, I'm the child of an immigrant. And part of the reason so many come illegally is that our legal immigration system is incredibly expensive. It's burdensome. The waits can be years or even decades. There is no stronger advocate of legal immigration in the U.S. Senate than I am. And in the course of the past year, repeatedly I've introduced amendments and bills to expand legal immigration, to improve legal immigration, to streamline legal immigration. And unfortunately what happens is the battle in the Senate right now and in Washington is so focused on partisan politics. So the Senate Judiciary Committee, when we considered the immigration reform bill, I did not support the bill that passed because I don't think it would solve the problem. I think it would make the problem worse. What I tried to do was introduce a series of amendments to improve the bill, to expand legal immigration, to secure the borders. And what happened, unfortunately, is every single Senate Democrat on the committee voted against every one of those amendments. And unfortunately, what we're seeing in Washington is the White House and many of the Senate Democrats, I think, are playing politics with immigration rather than actually trying to solve the problem.
Did any of your amendments include a path to citizenship?
They did not, and I don't support a path to citizenship. And I'll tell you, there was really the clarifying moment of the entire debate. I introduced an amendment to eliminate a path to citizenship for those who are here illegally. And I gave 3 reasons for it. I said, number one, I think a path to citizenship is profoundly unfair to the millions of legal immigrants who followed the rules, who came here, who waited years, and came here legally. I said, number two, we've seen historically a path to citizenship will only encourage more illegal immigration. And I know, you've been down to the border, I've been down to the border. When you see the photographs of the bodies of women and children abandoned in the desert who are entrusting themselves to transnational global criminal cartels, being physically assaulted, sexually assaulted, left to die, this current system is anything but humane. We should not want to encourage more illegal immigration. But the third argument I gave, I said, listen, even if none of you are persuaded by this, it is abundantly clear there are not 218 votes to pass a pathway to citizenship in the House. If that is insisted upon, this will be voted down. So if you actually want to pass something, if the objective is to solve the problem rather than to make a political statement, you should agree with eliminating the path to citizenship. And notably, the amendment I introduced didn't alter the underlying work permit in the bill. So it would have allowed those who were here illegally under the Gang of Eight bill to receive a legal work permit, simply not to be eligible for citizenship. And the response, Senator Chuck Schumer from New York gave the clarifying comment, I think, of the entire debate. He said, if there is no citizenship, there can be no reform. And I'll tell you, Dr. Murillo, my response, I said, let me thank Senator Schumer for his candor. He's admitted he has one overarching partisan objective. And if he can't get 100% of it, he's willing to do nothing to secure the border. He's willing to do nothing for farmers and ranchers of the high-tech community. And most tellingly, what he just said is if he can't get 100% of his partisan political objective, he's willing to do nothing for the 11 million people who are here illegally. He's willing to leave them trapped in the shadows rather than accept any form of compromise.
But isn't that, again, at the end of the day, the problem with Washington right now, is that people are not willing to compromise?
I agree that that is the problem with the position of the Democrats. On our end, we were trying to compromise. And the way President Obama has pushed immigration reform, in my opinion, he does not want this to pass. What he wants is what's happened so far, for it to pass the Senate, for it to be voted down in the House, because he wants to use this as a political issue in 2014 and 2016. And I will note, then Senator Obama, when he was in the Senate, played a critical role sticking the knife in the back of immigration reform in 2007. Because the labor unions do not want immigration reform. And so the Democrats, I think, are playing a game where they're telling many people in the Hispanic community they support it. But you're not supporting something if you tie it to the mast of a sinking ship. And that's what they're doing. They're playing a game where they don't actually want it to pass. They simply tell people they do while they ensure that it gets voted down. I think that's cynical. I think it's the wrong way to go. But the position of President Obama and the Senate Democrats is they will not compromise. They've got a partisan objective, and that trumps everything else. I think that's really unfortunate.
Well, on behalf of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us, and I know our board members are looking forward to visiting with you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.